greater challenge, there was heroic. That worked out great, and we're going to keep on doing those kinds of encounters. And another thing we wanted to do for Cataclysm was try to make our raiding more flexible, which gets into, well, the flexible raid lock system. I wanted to talk about this for a little bit. The flexible raid lock system is actually really just sort of an evolution of the Lich King raid, something that raiding, we always look back and say, like, hey, how could we make this better? What could we do? How can we make it more convenient for players? How can we make it better for raid and guild leaders to schedule and manage their raids? So back in Old War and even back to Sartharian, we did this cool thing of, hey, let's make encounters where you get to determine the difficulty of the encounter by whether or not you leave one of the Black Drakes up, whether or not you want the help of the Titan helpers in Old War. There's a lot of different things, and those turned out really cool. In fact, it turns out so cool that in Trial of the Crusader we said, hey, let's just make the entire thing heroic. So you no longer have to choose on an encounter-by-encounter basis. We just say, hey, if you want to set the entire thing to heroic, there you go. And then in Icecrown we said, well, it's actually sort of a pain in the ass to like go out, you know, reset the raid, go back in as a new difficulty. Let's just make it so where you can choose on an encounter-by-encounter basis whether or not you want it to be normal or heroic. And I know a lot of people, like, this has worked out really well because it means they get a whole lot of heroic loot off the boat. So that worked out really well. So again, we get to the Cataclysm flexible raid lock system, and I just wanted to go over briefly like how it works, as it feels like there's still a little bit of confusion out there. The basics of it is that the normal difficulty raid progress is actually saved on your character now. It's not saved on a raid ID anymore. So if you go in and do boss 1 and boss 2 in a raid, that means that you're done with, that's what you've done for that particular raid, and if you want to do 3 and 4 in another raid, you can do so. So you can actually join multiple normal raids of either size. So 10 or 25 doesn't matter anymore. So in Cataclysm, along with this, is that they're actually going to be dropping the same loot. So what we want to do is create a situation where, depending upon how many people you've got available to you, let's say you've got, normally you're a 25 player raiding guild, but it's the holidays and you don't have that many people. Well, you can switch to 10. Let's say something happens and a lot of people have to miss a weekend. No problem. You can switch down to 10. Let's say that, you know, you get a bunch of people together and all of a sudden, like, wow, Cataclysm is so awesome. All these people came back. That's sweet. All of a sudden, you can go and do 25 player raiding again. Again, trying to keep it super flexible. The key thing here is you can only defeat each boss once per week. So that's the sort of like the big thing you sort of have to remember. And also the one like sort of caveat is that heroic difficulty works pretty much so like it did in Wrath of the Lich King, where once you've killed a heroic boss, you're locked with that raid group to that raid with a raid ID. But let's say there's a circumstance where if I go in, kill 2 heroic bosses, but my internet goes out and the rest of the raid goes on and kills everything else in the zone, and you're like, oh no. Well, you can actually go back and do normal with another group or with an alt raid or something like that. So again, it's super duper flexible. And like I said, there's a bunch of benefits. It helps players with erratic play schedules. Not everyone has the ability to say, all right, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, these are our raiding nights. Some people have jobs or school situations that babies, children, I mean, life is complicated. Things happen. I mean, a real life emergency doesn't necessarily end your raiding for the week, and that's pretty cool. Another thing here is that, like I said, raid leaders have more schedule and roster flexibility. If you can't, in a lot of situations, like if your main tank doesn't show up or you just don't have enough people to do 25, that's pretty much so it for the week. But with flexible raid locks, you can take a 25, go down to a 10. You can take a 25, go down to 2 10s, and then later on in the week, when everyone does get back together, you go back into 25 and you beat everything on 25. So flexible raid locks, we think, will be a really nice addition to Cataclysm raiding that will give everyone a lot of flexibility and means to raid hopefully when you want to and with the people you want to. So here's just trying to show off the UI. It's a little bit hard to see, but again, going back to the idea that it's your character, In the middle, on the left is the raid pane that everyone's pretty familiar with, and then when you look at raid info, there's the information for Icecrown Citadel in this case. And up on the right-hand side, you actually see a list of every single encounter in the raid, with a note of whether or not you defeated it or not. So the messaging here, we're trying to be as super clear as possible. If you step into a raid that's already in progress, what's been defeated and what's not, so you know, hey, do I want to like be in here, or do I want to bail and maybe like come back with a different pug? And again, this is sort of the error message you get when you come in and say, hey, these are the bosses that are dead. If you join this raid and you want to kill another boss in here, that's cool, but those are all the bosses that the game's going to consider you to have killed. So be real mindful of these messages when they come up, because they show you what the raid's been doing when they come into the zone. So I'm going to hand it back over to Corey, show you the patch, go over a little bit of what we're going to see in patch 4.1.
Thanks, Scott. One other thing with before we get into 4.1.0 that's cool with the new flexible raid locks is you can actually send your flexible raid lock to a player just like you can an item. So the way you can shift click an item and say, oh, here, check out this new thing I got, you can do the exact same thing with your raid lock. So if you're wondering, like, if your buddy is available to do this thing with you, you can go into the raid UI, shift click, and you'll be able to send that over. They can click it and see all the bosses that you've killed in any individual instance. It's a cool little added. Oh yeah, you can see it in chat the same way. It's awesome. So I'm going to get into a preview for 4.1.0. We haven't even shipped 4.0 yet, but obviously we're already working on stuff to come out after the patch. So we want to give you guys a little sneak peek at what we're planning to do. So first off, Firelands raid. So this is going to be our first patch raid that we're going to be adding to Cataclysm. There's a couple things about this that are really cool we wanted to let you guys know about. Like, the concept behind Firelands raid, why it fits in so well is because it's a part of Hyjal. So anyone that's been in the beta or heard about the starting zones in Cataclysm, we have two starting zones, Vashir and Hyjal. Works similar to Northrend, where you could pick to go into Howling Fjord or Borean Tundra. They both share the same level range. So in Hyjal, the storyline basically is that Ragnaros is trying to come out of the elemental plane of fire back into Hyjal and basically burn down the world tree. That's his goal.